All right, look, what if we just get started and then we can do further introductions and discussions. So I will, once I work out again how to run this. It's been a little while for some reason. It's only been a month since I've done one of these and I feel like I've forgotten it all. First of all, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands that we're all meeting on today and pay my respects to elders past and present. I acknowledge that my gratitude that we share this land today and my sorrow for some of the cost of that sharing, my hope and belief that we can move to a place of equity, justice and partnership together. I also pay my respects or extend my respect to any Aboriginal people that are joining us tonight and note your expertise, the expertise that you bring to this session. Thank you everyone for joining. We've got a great turnout tonight, which is really good. And I must very much appreciate that you've all logged in. We are constantly on recruitment drive for foster carers because the need just keeps growing for all types of foster care. So we're here tonight to talk to you about the different types and what it means to be a foster carer and how we go through the process to help you become one. Obviously, our partnership is direct with the Department of Child Protection, and they are on a daily basis sending us referrals to have little people looked after while the department does the work that they need to do. And we have the great pleasure of supporting foster carers across Australia, but my responsibility is Operations Manager for South Australia in the foster care space. So I do appreciate that you've come and taken some interest to hear what we've got to say about foster care and to consider that as something that you might like to do. Having said that though, if after you've heard this presentation and you feel that foster care isn't from you, I still very much appreciate the time that you've taken, because the information that you hear tonight can be shared across the board with your networks and people at work and at school. And you might hear down the line after saying, oh, I saw this great webinar the other night, and someone might be interested and they might come ahead. So the fact that you're here tonight listening to what I have to say, the only thing that I do ask that you do really is to share the information that you are hearing tonight. And if you're interested yourself, we will, throughout the night, Sharree will cut and paste a call me back form into the chat box, which is a link, which will, I'll explain that as we go along anyway. So in terms of introductions, my name is Avril and I am the Operations Manager for Foster Care in South Australia. I look after all the placement support teams for foster care, and I also talk about, and hopefully soon we'll be able to introduce the concept of Mockingbird, which is a model of care that we have now launched here in South Australia with into these webinars. I'll try and weave some of that information in, but it's very new. We've only launched this week our first constellation of Mockingbird. I also am responsible for the Living Arts team, which is a team of artists who support our children in foster care and put on great events throughout the year for carers and foster children. And I manage the reunification team. So we've just started and launched into reunification efforts, which are about returning young people to their birth parents if it's at all possible. Joining me tonight, as Sharree had introduced herself earlier, is Sharree Hardwick, who is our Carer Engagement Officer. So Sharree, if you do the call me back form and you move forward and through this process, Sharree is the person that you will spend a huge amount of your first initial stages with, in terms of getting to know what's next and helping and guiding you through all of the things that you need to know to move toward assessment, which again later in this presentation you'll hear more about. Normally we have a foster care ambassador as well with us. Unfortunately tonight our ambassadors were not available, but our carer ambassadors are foster carers and are able to provide a perspective from the foster care experience on the ground, which is always, we find, quite valuable. So from that, just a bit of housekeeping. Obviously before 2020, these sessions were generally run in person at community centres or church halls and whatever, and I'd be telling you where the tea and coffee is and the biscuits. I'm sorry, wouldn't it be great if we could send out packets of biscuits for everybody that attends at least? You don't get all the free food by joining a webinar, but anyway, I'm sure you've got your cup of tea or your dinner sitting there in front of you, biscuits hopefully if you can eat them, and I'm absolutely certain you also know where the toilets are, so I don't need to give you any of that information. But what I do need to point out is that we can't see you as attendees. We can only see that you're logged in, and when you type in the chat box, we can see what you say. If you've got any questions or comments throughout the session, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We may not answer them directly because throughout the webinar, you'll find that a lot of your questions will be answered at the end, though we do take the time to spend some time answering questions that haven't been answered for you. So feel free to jot down things and we'll keep an eye on it. And hopefully if it's anything particularly relevant or pertinent, it'll be raised straight away. Otherwise, we'll work through it at the end of the show. And then, so for a bit of an overview in terms of what we're going to, the plan for tonight is that I'll give you a bit of a spiel about Life Without Barriers as a whole. We are a national organisation and we don't just do foster care. So I'll certainly give you a bit of a Reader's Digest condensed version of Life Without Barriers and what we do, who we are. But we'll talk predominantly, obviously, about foster care, what it is, who needs it, and how to become one. Generally, unless I go off on a tangent, that'll take about half an hour. And I do have both Sharree and another officer sitting there to pull me into line if I do go off topic. So hopefully I won't hold up and you'll get all of the information you need within half an hour. And then the questions, sometimes we can be sitting here for another half an hour having a chat. So totally up to you as to the questions that you might ask. Towards the end, I do have a list of frequently asked questions that we'll go through. Obviously there's the Call Me Back form and also some links to foster care stories as well will be posted into the chat box. And then after you've heard all this, if you're keen to take the next steps, I think it's within 48 hours, you'll receive a phone call if you fill in a Call Me Back form, just to have a further chat about where to from here. So it all happens very quickly once you've raised your hand, and obviously we do try to go at your pace, and we'll work with you in the best way to move things forward. So just to start with, because we do have so many people on tonight, I wonder, Vicky's already in there from Greenock and Horton, just where I Nalyapa. I've never heard of that place. Is that out in the mid-north? West Croydon, Hope Valley, Mypolonga.
I've got a fair bit of driving to do then. This is good.
Sharree does come out and visit you. Yes, absolutely. So there is a few places that I can see there. My goodness, we are.
Hello, Caroline.
All over the place.
Giving her a call soon, hopefully.
Terrific. Anglevale, well, that's not far from me. I'm in Gawler. Clemzig. Excellent. Thank you very much. We obviously require foster carers all over the state. Sharree.
Hi, Caroline. How are you?
Right. So the next question I would like to just get a sense of is how long have you been thinking about foster care before you've come in to have a look at this webinar, where I'm really quite interested. It's kind of an extreme. Usually people start, just saw the ad, clicked, and here they are, and have not really heard about it. And then there's usually about 2 years, and then there's those that have been thinking about it for about 5 to 10 years, waiting for their children to leave or get themselves into a position. So quite a few years, yeah. So that, yeah, they're a big mixture of people that from 1 month to quite a few years. So yeah,
It's generally the biggest answer. A
yeah.
couple of months through to a few years. It's a big decision.
It certainly is. So before we get into the nitty-gritties of foster care, I'll talk very quickly about Life Without Barriers, what we're about, just so that you know sort of the agency that we work with, that you're interested in. So we are a leading national social purpose organisation with a mission to partner with people to change lives for the better. That's a statement that's made all over the place when referring to who Life Without Barriers is. We support over 23,000 people in more than 500 communities across Australia. Life Without Barriers was founded in 1995 in Newcastle, New South Wales, with our initial services being support for people with a disability. And obviously the Life Without Barriers, it was recognising that people with disabilities have so much to bring to the world, and but find it difficult to sort of get and be engaged. So that was kind of what got everybody really passionate about things in Life Without Barriers. The head office is still in Newcastle, but we do have a satellite national office in the Sydney CBD area and offices across all states and the Northern Territory. Here in South Australia, we've got our main office in Unley. It's a little bit difficult to miss if you run it driving down Green Hill Road or King William Road, a giant square box on the corner, and which has got Life Without Barriers in huge letters across it. I'm sure you've seen it if you've driven around Adelaide around that sort of area.
Actually, a beautiful building.
It is. And we have our satellite office. We've got a satellite office in Mount Gambier, but we also stretch our support into the mid-north, the Yorke Peninsula, Port Pirie, Kadina, Moonta. We haven't gone up as high as Port Augusta at the moment, but certainly if we get a lot of interest in foster care or from foster carers, there is definitely placement needs out in the regions as well. So these are the things that we do as an agency now. We've grown from just disability. So we do obviously our foster care and NDIS services for people with disabilities. We also do supported independent living programs for disability. We work with refugee and asylum seekers, homelessness. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people is a very big focus of our agency across all areas. Aged care, mental health, and obviously people with alcohol and other drug issues. We also have a very strong advocacy focus on working with people from culturally diverse backgrounds and others who are vulnerable to social exclusion. So that includes also a lot of advocacy work for the LGBTIQ community and all sorts of other communities of that ilk. We're really serious about our commitment to our values and which I've put up there, and I will read them out because it is something that we find and are exceptionally passionate about. Obviously, everything starts with a good relationship, and us being imaginative, trying to think about ways that we can reduce the barriers of being able to engage, obviously life without barriers. We're very respectful in all of our dealings across people of all diverse areas. We do try to be as responsive as possible, which it will be evident if you fill in a call me back form. We'll get back to you very, very quickly and move things through and keep in touch about that. And we're also courageous, and we do stand up for what we believe in, and do stand up for the little guys that sometimes don't get heard. Another thing that's extremely important in the work that we do, most especially obviously in our foster care program, is a very strong mission statement when it comes to caring for children, and that we believe that everyone shares this responsibility. Every child has a right to feel safe and respected, and we all have the responsibility to make sure their safety comes first, that they are well cared for, protected from abuse, and given the respect that they deserve. We've got a training program called We Put Children First, which is understanding child sexual abuse, that you can access on our website if you want to find out more. But also, if you become a foster carer with us, this training is one of the mandatory modules that you're required to complete. Part of this is this particular drive and this focus, and the way that we do this was driven by the commissions into child sexual abuse, where it was found that young people require, everybody that works across and with young people require a level of understanding about what it means to be safe for a child, and when a child is speaking out, what it means to listen, and what we should do in those situations to keep children safe. So that brings us to the end of overview about life without barriers as a whole. And now I'm going to move across to discussing what foster care actually is. So obviously foster care is about looking after young people, and it's in a number of different ways, for the temporary or permanent placement of children who are not able to live with either their birth parents or within their family networks due to factors that relate to child abuse, neglect, abandonment, or other child safety issues. We obviously provide a safe and secure environment for children while the Department of Child Protection determines what the next steps are in determining what is best in the best interests of a young person. Children come into foster care at all ages, including newborns straight from the hospital, some of them less than a day old. Also, some children, and right up to 17 years and 11 months. So we have sometimes been searching for placements for 17-year-olds who have 1 month to go before they can enter an adult independent living service or something like that as well. Children come into care, I've always said, at all stages. They can stay for one night, they can stay for a few weeks or for years. Some will go directly into foster care until they turn 18 years of age, and sometimes they enter the family as a temporary or short-term placement. And quite often they enter placement as a short-term placement and they end up staying permanently. So one of the things that we love about working with foster carers is that you do need to be adaptable, because the situation can change quite rapidly sometimes. But as you work through the assessment process with the staff from LWB, and certainly in your first and initial talks with Sharree, we'll discover and you'll get a sense of what is actually going to work for you best and what fits with your skills, your availability, your family network, and all of those sort of things. But whatever you choose to do, your commitment is valued. It's not an easy role, and we do appreciate that anybody that just even considers it for a minute, It just means that you might share across. So there are two main differences in the types of foster care and the placements that differ. These are the length of stay, as in how long the young person will be with you, as I've kind of crossed a little bit there, but also the complexity and the needs of the young person who requires the placement. Most placements obviously will have a level of complexity because there are certain people, certain young people who have really significant healthcare needs, or they require significant behavioural support, either due to disability, but also the impacts of trauma and abuse can sometimes make things quite complex in the way that they understand the world and interact in the world around them. So with regard to the length of stay, we have short-term and emergency foster carers, where it can happen that you get a call at 7 o'clock at night going, we've got a little person here that requires somewhere to go as an emergency placement. They've just been removed from their parents, or they've just been removed from a really unsafe situation, and we need to put them somewhere safe and nurturing while the department decides what's going on. Those short-term and emergency placements can go for just one night. They can also stretch out for the emergency period is a 7-day period. Usually when we place in emergency care, it's for 7 days. But sometimes that can only be, it may be 24 hours. It may be that mum's gotten extremely ill, has had to go to hospital, and it's just for the period while the mother's in hospital because there's nobody else to look after the children. Then there's the long-term foster care, which obviously is exactly what it is, means it's long-term, right through until the child turns 18. And quite often in those situations, children become part of the family in a foster family and stay and be adults in that family and are accepted and welcomed there. And then we also have respite and weekend care, which is a very high need for specialist respite. So for children with complex needs, whether that be health, disability or behavioural support needs, we have carers that look after them full time, and one weekend a month, maybe a week through school holidays, they just require a break. So we really are very keen to build and find specialist respite foster carers to look after our little people and help support the carers that do that full time. So when I'm talking about complexity level, we've got general and specialist placements in South Australia. That's the way that they're referred to us from the department. In theory, obviously, general foster carers, children requiring general foster care, my apologies, have less complex needs than those children that require specialist foster care. They're obviously with specialist foster care, we provide a much higher level of training and support, so that you can learn how to look after children in a therapeutic way, most especially those children that have experienced a great deal of trauma. They require a real special approach to the way we look after them. And as an agency, we provide a range of training and support services that sit around that, which I'll go into more detail. Obviously, most children in foster care have some level of complexity just by virtue of the fact that they're coming from a complex situation that requires that they can't be looked after at home. So even our general placements sometimes can be quite, I wouldn't say challenging, but certainly hold a level of complexity that requires support. And as an agency, we provide that additional training and understanding and support to sit around that situation. So complex support needs in terms of specialist foster care could be due to a whole range of factors, which include learning difficulties, communication difficulties, young people being non-verbal, intellectual disabilities, obviously physical disabilities, and complex and challenging behaviour. And of course, we do have a number of children that tick every single one of those boxes. And they are the children that obviously are the most difficult to place. But certainly if you feel you've got space in your heart and home, we provide all the support we possibly can to be able to give you the skills to be able to provide that level of care. So specialist foster carers obviously need to be more flexible and more readily available. It used to be the case that if you were a specialist foster care, at least as a couple, at least one of the couple were not able to work full time, just in order to be available to the young person that is in your care. That's not so much the case anymore, but certainly there's a necessity to be flexible in your time and work arrangements to be able to meet unexpected needs of a young person. As specialist foster carers, there is a higher reimbursement rate in terms of looking after, because there is a higher expectation in terms of training and your availability to be that. You're provided as a specialist foster care with a lot more regular and intensive support. So it's an expectation that a child and family practitioner who's allocated to you as a carer visits and works with you on a fortnightly basis at least, in terms of building skill levels and giving you an understanding and working around what the needs of the young person are. And obviously, we provide extra training. So now we'll turn our attention, that's again a bit more of a brief overview, but why do children, we'll turn our attention to why children come into foster care, which, you know, for the most part, we do know that a lot of it is around abuse and neglect. What I mentioned before, the illness or unexpected death of a parent, where there are not any other relatives or people within that network, family network, to be able to care for them. And also for families being unable to provide care for the children. And that could be related to sort of mental health illness, drug and alcohol, extreme poverty, homelessness, situations like that. So we do try to support our carers, and we need to understand that sometimes children come in, and while foster carers are asked to sort of hold and keep a child safe while we scope family to be able to put a young person with their biological and extended family. And then once they're found, there's a move to transition. Quite often in the case of quite dysfunctional families, we find that young people haven't got anybody within their network who's able to look after them. And that's where our lovely foster carers come in. So here's a question for you. I wonder how many children you think are currently in out-of-home care across Australia. So once again, if you'd like to pop in a number into your chat box. We're talking about not just South Australia. I will give you the statistics, although they're a bit aged now. We're moving into a new presentation that'll have, again, too many. Absolutely, you're right, too many. Everybody's pretty much realising it's quite a lot. So yes, currently at the moment there's around 46,000 young people in various types of out-of-home care across Australia. These are statistics from February 2020. And in South Australia, oh no, sorry, this statistic is 2018, I might beg your pardon. And in South Australia, the statistics for 2020 was just over 4,200 children in foster care. So obviously, we need to find out about the children. So there's the child abuse report line that receives 70-odd thousand calls in a year about expressing concerns for children and young people in the care of their parents or in the care of extended family. And these are translate generally into usually about 50 or 60 placement referrals coming through to Life Without Barriers, requiring placement for children on a weekly, almost a weekly basis. I think it's about 287 placement requests a month. You'll find that we are trying to find placements for young people. So obviously there is a dire need for foster carers. So this graph shows you the substantiated types or evidence types, harm types over a 12-month period. Obviously child abuse and neglect make up the predominant reasons why children come into care. And if you move through the assessment, some of the core training that you're given at the start of the process focuses on the impact of trauma and abuse on brain development, which obviously has a profound impact on young people and how they move through their lives as they get older. One thing I do always think is really important to point out here, even with physical abuse, neglect and emotional abuse especially, is that 99.9% of parents don't wake up in the morning with the intention to harm their children. They do so because of underlying factors of not having the support, not understanding how to do it, not getting the training. You know, you don't get a degree to be able to have a child, that sort of thing. So we do find that foster carers do need to hold an element of compassion for parents who have been unable to safely care for their children, because there are so many factors that play into that, and nearly all of the time those factors have nothing to do with them actually making a choice to hurt their children. So at this point, we've learned about different types of foster care, and we've just unpacked how kids come into care, or why they need it. And then the rest of the presentation now focuses on what we look for with foster parents and the processes to becoming one. So who can become a foster carer? The fundamental task of a foster carer obviously is to provide a safe and nurturing environment, but also to form positive and nurturing relationships with children and young people who perhaps have not had that experience before, and help them build the new skills to understand how to manage life successfully. A lot of our children obviously come into care and they have not learned that life is, for them, life has been really tough right from the get-go, and they've learned really maladaptive skills on getting on with life. So we need people who are able to teach children through word and action and role model how to build life skills. So these are the answers to the exam. If there was an exam for foster carer, if you've got these qualities, you've got it. So we are looking for people that are warm and nurturing. Over years and years of experience, this list that's here above you has been developed. These are the things that the research tells us needs to be fundamental parts of who you are as a human, that will allow you to, or help you to feel really successful as a foster carer. So to be really altruistic, wanting to be able to give back to the world and to show little people that haven't had great starts in life a way to have it, a different life. To be really curious around children and how their little minds work and how we can help them to grow and develop even after experiencing quite significant abuse and neglect. It needs to be inclusive of family. And that means that when we speak to children about their birth families, when we hear children talk about their birth families, we need to be open to hearing that and positive about that, because one of the things the research has been very, very clear about is that if children are able to maintain a connection with their biological family, their outcomes in life are so much better, even if they're not able to live with them, but to actually know that they're okay and they're safe from any harm that might be caused by them, but they essentially are their people, and they need to be able to know that and feel that everybody accepts that. Flexibility is a huge thing in foster care. Things change from one minute to the next, so being flexible is very important. Obviously sensitive, willing to invest time and money, and being really there for the kids, whatever it takes. That's what we need carers to be. And something I've thrown in here is really important, is open to throwing the Parenting 101 book out the window. If you've raised your own children and they are good, functioning, well contributing members of society, or even if they're not and they limp along a little bit, it doesn't, the way that you've raised your children in a normal and, you know, for whatever normal is, obviously that's a big term. When we look after children who've experienced trauma and abuse, those standard parenting practices that are in parenting handbooks, you know, the Raising Boys handbook and all of those sort of things, those tactics or those parenting strategies often don't work, or don't work for very long, or are not particularly sustainable for children who've experienced trauma and abuse. So we work very hard with our foster carers to learn how to respond and work with young people in a different way that sometimes feels a little counterintuitive. But again, we work from a basis of really strong evidence research that says this is the way we get the best outcomes for children and help them to move into the grown-up world as better functioning and being able to manage life experiences in a much healthier way. So these are the qualities that we look for throughout the whole assessment process, right from when Sharree comes out to visit you with all the paperwork and whatnot. Those are the sort of things that we're looking at to see and make sure that you're going to be comfortable in the space of being able to provide foster care. So who can be a foster carer? Oh, basically, you name it, you can be it. In South Australia, there is a rule of being over 25 to be a foster carer. However, in all situations, the only thing that's not really negotiable is the spare bedroom. You must have a spare bedroom, a space for a young person to put their things to sleep, and an area that is that young person's own space. So in that situation, sometimes people are going, well, we're planning on moving to a bigger house, or we're building a bigger house. Most certainly, if you are incorporating a room that is going to be able to accommodate a foster child, then the assessment process can go on. But if you're in a one-bedroom apartment or something and you've got no intentions of moving and no space for a child to have their own space, then that would preclude you from being assessed for foster care. However, in all other aspects, any culture, single or a couple, with or without children, having had children or never had children, being well and healthy with emotional capacity, I suppose that is another sort of not negotiable. Yes, I've just seen there, Natasha, you can work full-time. You have to be available though. You do need to be able to be flexible or have contingency plans in place if things happen that you can to enable a young person. So a lot of our foster carers' children go to childcare. Some of them obviously out of school hours care as well in those sort of situations. So yes, or if in doubt, at least ask, because for the most part you can be anybody. And throughout the assessment process, we find out whether or not you're a good fit. So I've heard foster carers say it's not scary, but it's challenging. Sometimes it can be a little bit scary, but we're there to hold your hand all the way. The support we provide is critical to ensure that foster carers remain confident and secure in this important role that they have. And there is a variety of ways that we show that support. I'll just go around from starting at 12 o'clock, the 24/7 support. Obviously, that's a phone-in line that goes directly to a practitioner if you're having any trouble at all at any stage out of hours. Generally, if it's within work hours, you would call your allocated child and family practitioner. You've also got the departmental worker as well that you can call during hours. If they're not available, obviously whoever is on call for that week, there's an on-call line to call. We also, obviously we have a care team approach. So you've got the department, any health or allied health professionals that might be around the child, and anybody else within the child and family practitioner. We have clinicians as well, clinical support. So if the young person requires therapy or any therapeutic intervention that's above and beyond what a practitioner is able to provide, we've got a clinical team that provides that support. Obviously, you get reimbursed for looking after young children under the guardianship of the minister. Access to our employee assistance program, which is for all employees and volunteers with Life Without Barriers. We do a lot of social events this school holidays. We've just done an immersion event at Colebrook, and we're going to Monarto Zoo next week for a great event for children and their carers and the children, biological children of carers as well. We don't exclude, but we do try and do a number of events throughout the year to create a bit of a community around and get people feeling like they're part of something bigger. We do try and provide respite for all children in foster care, and obviously we're driving to try and find more respite carers, because the more children coming into care, the more foster carers, respite carers we're needing. So specialist foster care is our big push, is to have people registered to be able to provide specialist respite. We have a learning and development program, both online and face-to-face training. And as you become a foster carer, you have a learning and development plan that you enter in, when you're handed over from assessment to the placement support team. Your learning and development plan is there, and we will work with you to meet what those goals are in terms. We've got quite an extensive online learning platform that allows you to do self-directed learning, and then also some compulsory components of training that's required. So this is probably the question everybody now is, what do we do? How do we do it? So first of all, there's the inquiry stage. This looks a little bit different from time to time, depending on your availability, but we do start with the inquiry stage. It's in 3 steps. The first part is the information night, which is what you are attending now. So you are now on the road to becoming a foster carer. And then after that, we have a phone interview. So if after tonight you're interested, you will be, obviously there's a link that can be put, I think, Sharree, are you able to cut and paste the link into the chat box for the Call Me Back form? Maybe. If you click on that link, it will just ask you for your name and mobile number, or best contact number and best time to contact, and you will get a phone call from our national recruitment team. And then they will talk through sort of some preliminary questions to make sure you're in the right place and ready to move to the next stage. From there, you get handed over to our beautiful Sharree Hardwick, who is our carer here with us today. Sharree, would you like to just briefly talk through what it is you do once you receive the information about a new applicant?
Unmute might be handy. Just saying. So I get the calls from the national database and they all go up onto the system once they have put all their information through the system with themselves. After that, they come up on my system like that I check every day. Then I will contact you guys and organise a time. We'll more or less have a bit of a chat first, and then we'll organise a time to have a home visit. Between that first contact and the home visit, I will send you an email with a welcome pack of information. In there, there's the PACE model, there's Matthew's story, which some people get straight off the national database and some do not. So I kind of send it anyway, because you do use it throughout the whole process for reflective practice with the assessors. Then we'll do the home visit, and at the home visit, it's just kind of getting to know you. It can go for about 2.5 to 3 hours. I've loved it. Caroline, Yolan's on here, and so is Esma. They are all on here. I've already contacted them and we've spoken numerous times. Lovely people. That's the fun part about this, actually, is getting to know you all. I absolutely love it. It's heaps of fun. Yeah, so we go from there and then we organise home visits where we do household checks and then send out all the forms that you will need for your clearances, and set you up with some training sessions for the initial ones, which is shared lives, safe environments, and trauma and attachment. And then from me, you will then go to one of the assessors in my team and they will work with you to the end of the process, but then you go on to Avril's team.
Thank you, Sharree. So yes,
okay.
Orientation training. Yeah, and Sharree, certainly make sure that you're all well looked after right through that process. And also in this screening stage. So that's where Sharree was talking about coming out, filling in forms, application forms. We do police checks, health checks, need to find out that you're all good and well.
One of those is a self-assessment and the other one is from your GP. So
yeah,
covered both ways.
And then a household safety check, as there are obviously certain aspects. If you've got a swimming pool out the back but no pool fence and things like that, the home safety check is just to give you the heads up of things that might need to be repaired or looked at in terms of moving forward. And obviously throughout the assessment phase, you've got opportunities to work on those things. And then once you're ready to get going, we start with the interview stage, which is what Sharree was saying. She hands you over to one of our amazing assessors. We have got a team of assessors, so you'll get allocated to an assessor that will come and walk with you for the rest of the way to do some assessment interviews, which are usually, again, probably 2-3 hour episodes, 3 or 4 times, depending on how quickly they can do them all sort of one after the other, or once a week or once a month. Obviously, the quicker and the most available that you can be helps that process, that interview process go really well. Then the assessor goes away and writes up the assessment. It's called a step-by-step assessment. If you want step-by-step foster care assessment, if you want to Google that, I presume it would probably show you the sort of questions and things that they go through around that particular process. So they write up the assessment, they let you have a read of it, and once everybody's signed it off, it gets submitted to the department for approval. CARU is a word that you'll probably hear a lot, which is the Carer Approval and Review Unit. It used to be Registration Unit, that's changed now to Review Unit in South Australia. So your assessment sits there until it gets allocated to a senior assessor within the department, and they read through the assessment and give the final get-go and the final approval. So how long does all of that take? Well, it's a little bit like how long's a piece of string. There's all the required trainings, like the shared lives training that needs to be done before the assessment starts. So it's how quickly you can book in and be part of those trainings. We now do those, we do them face-to-face, but we also do them online as well. So there's a few different ways that you can undertake that training. and then how quickly it is also dependent on those assessment interviews and how often you can have them, if you can do them really quickly. I know that some people have got, booked one a week for 3 weeks and boom, it's done. Other people have gone 2 in 1 week and one. And then we also have people whose lives really do get in the way, which is sometimes a bit of an indication that, perhaps it's not the right time, but, 1 a month, or when it starts stretching out a lot, we do start to try and push it through a little bit quicker and encourage you to really focus and prioritise those assessments. So once you've commenced the screening stage, which is the bit filling in all of those forms and everything, we do aim to admit an assessment for approval within 3 months. We're actually contracted to do that by the department and graded, I suppose you could say, in terms of how quick we take. So you do probably find that if things are starting to lag, there'll be a bit of an encouragement to move it along. So if we can get an interview 1 per week over a period of 3 to 6 weeks, we can get it done relatively quickly. But yes, we have a 3-month period. Then once we've submitted it to the department, unfortunately the time frames are completely out of our hands. We wait on a decision on it being allocated in the department, because the department is really keen for foster carers and we're really keen to bring people on board. We do try very hard and certainly put the pressure on the department to say, where are we at with allocation of a particular assessment. So we do try and drive it as best we can. So I suppose now the question is it the right time for you? These are the questions you probably want to consider in terms of taking the next steps. Do you have the time to commit to training? We do try and be flexible and do it a lot online now, as well as some face-to-face stuff. So if you've got the time to commit to training, if you've got time for someone to visit your home and do the initial home visits, but also the assessment interviews, they are lengthy by necessity, because we do need to really make sure that this is, and you are well suited and well positioned to be able to provide care. And then if you've got other people in your family, are they in a good place to be able to accept that this is something that you want to do and to support you through that process? Obviously, there is, if you've got people living with you, they become part of the assessment as well. And your extended family or regular visitors to the home, also there's a few questions that kind of, are around those people in your lives as well. And quite often, a lot of our foster carers have, come to foster care because they've had specific challenges themselves through their lives. And it's one of the things that, they got helped through it. So we really want to help you or help other young children. So what we also do, it certainly doesn't preclude you from being a foster carer, but we need to be sure that you've processed the challenges that you've had in your life and are in a really good space. Looking after children that have experienced trauma and abuse can trigger people in all sorts of ways. So it's really important that we make sure that you feel that you're in a really good space to be able to provide care. And this is Everyday Moments Are Everything. You might have seen some of the advertisements around the place that led you to come and link in for this particular session tonight. But we do think that it is one of the most enriching experiences. And if I had a foster carer here, one of my foster care ambassadors would have quite happily given you a real rundown on, what it's like to be a foster carer, the challenges and the great rewards that you can have in that space. And certainly at Life Without Barriers, we highly value our foster carers. So as I said at the start of this, if you're not in a position to foster care right now, you can still keep, support us by letting people in your community know about us, and certainly encouraging them maybe to come to one of our webinars. So that's the end of the formal presentation. I'm just going to go through some frequently asked questions. I'm going to ask Sharree to answer some of those, I think, because I've been doing an awful lot of the talking. You must be very sick of my voice by now. We'll go through. Obviously, there's the link for the Call Me Back form again, and feel free to answer that. Another thing that will happen from this point as well is that this particular session has been recorded. The chat screen won't come up in the recording. It's really just the PowerPoint and the talking that comes up in the recording. So that will be sent to you so you can look back on what's been discussed, and also the links again, and some further links to other information from some of our foster care ambassadors, some talking points and things like that. So that'll come to you in the email that you registered to attend this on. So our frequently asked questions are, and Sharree, I'll read it and then you can answer it. Can I take a foster child on holidays?
Yes, you can take a foster child on holidays. No, you just have to go through your social worker for that. They will have to put through an approval thing to the CE to get approval. It is run past the parents. You can take them overseas, you can take them interstate. However, they will be asking like a full itinerary, where you're staying, who you're staying with, contact details, information, flight numbers, just everything really, but it can be done.
Thank you. We've got a question there. I'm over 60. Am I too old to foster? Funnily enough, 60 is probably an average age for many of our foster carers come to fostering around 60 years of age. So certainly not too old to foster at the age of 60.
I actually have a fair few right now that are 60.
Well,
and we are going through the process and we're working through it. So yes, you can. No, you are not too old. Sorry, that was the question. We want you.
Do I get to choose which school my child goes to?
Oh, this is asked quite a lot on home visits. At the beginning, when the child first comes into care, say if it has been very recently removed and came into care, or they have been recently removed, likelihood is no, you do not, because of the fact that they are moving homes, they're leaving their parents, they're leaving their family. Leaving a school as well with their peers is just a lot. We want to keep one constant in their life, and that is the school. If, however, there's reasons that kind of go out above that, where the child's not been in the school for very long, it doesn't have long-lasting relationships there, or it's only just started, then it can be changed. It's an individual kind of basis that just depends.
If a child comes into your long-term care, and we need to establish them in a place, then obviously we look around the region that you live in terms of what's best, but it's always done in the best interest of the child. What does the child need?
Mm-hmm.
Do I get a choice in what child comes to live with us?
Love to say yes, but no. I'm sorry, the short answer is no. It will be that you just get a phone call. However, they are matched very well through Life Without Barriers, I understand. Is that not correct, Avril?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the carers?
And you can always say no. It's presented to you that the young children, certainly we're not going to give you a list of children and go, here, take your pick.
Yeah.
But we do, once we've got your approval table, which says sort of the age range that you're approved for, the type of, whether it's specialist or general, male or female or both, all of those sort of things, then we do go through a matching process and then try and sort of stick to same regions and things like that. And then we can present a young person to you to consider. If you become an emergency foster carer, generally those are the carers that are really happy to just play it, wing it and go, yep, not a problem, and the child arrives. It's usually for an emergency period, so you settle the child in, settle down, and whilst everybody's looking for somewhere else for the young person to go. So emergency foster carers are like gold to us, because sometimes we just so need so in terms of emergency carers, you still get a chance, like you get a call at night or, you know, whatever time, we've got a carer, a child that needs care. This is who the child is. This is what we know about the child. Quite often we don't know very much at this point. Are you ready? Would you like to? And if you say no, then generally we can't force you to take the child. Next question. Are they allowed to call me mum and dad?
This comes up a lot. Okay, like myself and Avril have both come over from child protection, so we've both worked in both agencies, and it does come up a lot. We certainly don't stop the children from saying mum and dad. It's not something that, you know, the carers encourage. It's something that if the child comes up with it on their own and they're feeling comfortable to do so, then it's kind of following their lead. It's about the child.
Absolutely. Some children call their carers by their first name. Some call them nan. Some call them auntie. Yeah. There's all sorts of ways. But yes, child-led is the way that we go with that one, most definitely. Are there any restrictions on pets?
I'm not even completely sure about this myself. I do have a carer, don't I, Esma, with fish and birds and a cat. That was just funny because we were talking about the food chain. No, there are no restrictions on pets, but I do think if they're on the dangerous dogs list, isn't that an issue?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of assessment that goes on around that. If you have a dog that is, you know, every time the assessor or Sharree turns up, you know, has to be shoved out the back because it's drooling and growling and barking at everybody, then perhaps we need to have a talk about, is that dog going to be safe around a child?
Could she not bring goodos or, or anything with me?
And then the other aspect of that also is that quite a lot of children, it's quite often children who've experienced abuse and neglect. I shouldn't say often, it's not unusual for children who've experienced abuse and neglect to not know how to be gentle with pets. And they can quite unintentionally hurt pets. So if you do have fragile pets or pets that will not cope with a young person learning how to be gentle, you know, and it can be like a 10-year-old child who's never really learned how to be kind, you know, those sort of things. So you do have to keep in mind what's going to work for you and your pets, but also, and again, right through the assessment process, those questions are explored and talked about and really sort of, you know, nutted out. So from there, that's all the frequently asked questions at this stage. I will now open it up to yourselves there. Look, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will have a look at them.
No, that is not an issue at all. So one of the questions was, my partner and I are a same-sex couple. Please tell me honestly if that will be an issue, as we have been disappointed by another agency. That is certainly not an issue at all. I actually have 3 same-sex couples at the moment.
We also have a very big community of same-sex couple carers in Life Without Barriers. So
absolutely,
no, absolutely not a problem at all.
Is there any need? Is there much or need for weekend or holiday care? Yes, we love respite carers. Woohoo! No, yes, we do love respite carers, and there is a great need for them. Respite carers are carers that provide respite weekends for other carers that are just having a bit of a struggle, or something's come up, or they might have a personal situation that's happened and are just requiring a little bit of support. And it can be ongoing too, can't it, Avril?
That's right. We also, one weekend a month, if we're able to establish a relationship with a respite carer where that person can come, where the young person can go to the same person one weekend a month, a week of the school holidays, but also, you know, being able to, what we do really like to do though, is for people that are looking at becoming respite carers, we will really encourage you to perhaps think about providing respite for at least 2 children, sort of one child on one weekend, one child on another weekend, and then that gives you 2 weekends to yourself as well. Obviously, you need to have weekends to yourself as well. And we're also desperate for specialist respite carers. So obviously we would talk about that sort of thing. So we've got a number of questions.
Fantastic questions coming through. Yeah, I was just about to say, Travis, I work away in the mines, but my partner Kimberly is always home. Will this affect us in any way? I actually have a couple that are on the, like one's in the mines now and one's not. She's FIFO, however you say it. She flies them now. I think the only problem we're probably having at the moment is trying to get her into her training sessions and stuff, but those are things that we'll work around. I certainly don't see it as a problem.
No, it's certainly not a problem, and we do have we have a specialist foster carer whose partner works fly in, fly out, and they've got a great network around them. I suppose what we do look at in those situations is who else have you got in your network that's able to help when you are there on your own if a situation came up that was necessary to respond to straight away. Another question was, does it matter if my biological children are young, 5 and 3 years of age? No, that doesn't matter at all. What we do initially try and do is match a child younger than your youngest child. So we would be looking at that stage 0 to 3. However, again, that's not necessarily the case. We do have young people that go in. The reason why we do that, obviously, is if we put an older child in, it's about just making sure it's a good fit for the family. But no, it doesn't. The age of your own biological children is not an issue, providing your biological children are, part of the assessment, and we understand what their best needs are as well. Fran has asked, as a respite carer, with the rule about having a bedroom for the child and young person, are you precluded if you have your own child? I.e., no, unfortunately, no. Yes, you are. You do need to have your own room. Children who are in foster care are not able to share, especially in respite. You can't share a bedroom with anyone unless it's with the sibling. So if you have one spare bedroom that's big and can have 2 beds, you could have siblings come, brother and sister or sister and sister, if it's safe for them to sleep in the same room together. But you do definitely need to have your own room for a child up to age 2, so 0 to 2 years of age. You are able to sleep a young person in the carer's room, so in a bassinet or cot in the carer's room up to the age of 2. But we also, in those situations, need to know once that child turns 2, there needs to be a room for them, so and specifically only for them. Is it harder to find homes for teenagers than babies and young children? I want to help where there is the greatest need. Absolutely. Yes. We do have a huge need for carers of children aged 10 to 15, or 10 to 16. The adolescent years are really tumultuous needs for our young people. Obviously, we do have a lot of babies and young children under 10 that require family-based placements as well. But if you're able to and have the skill set and are ready to do it, looking after our young children, sort of 10 years and up, is amazing.
Yolande, this is a good question, Yolande. I know that when I was in the department, it was kind of up to the child if they're, and because Yolande has talked about having school-age children up to teens as well. She's done a lot of children that are coming overseas to have their education here. So she does that student exchange programs and stuff. I don't know. I think it was up to the kids if they wanted to attend, because they were of an age where they could say yes or no.
the question, because people, I don't think, can everybody see the chat box? I can't remember, but if I go to church on Sunday, I'll have to take the child too. Is that okay? For the most part, yes, it is okay. There are some situations where parents are given involuntary custody agreements and things like that. If parents have a big objection, there might be some work that needs to be done around that sort of thing, but certainly it's something that can be discussed on placement, you know, when you're making a decision whether you take a placement or not. I don't have a lot of experience dealing with people with complex needs. I understand that there is training, but do you think this would be a barrier? It's certainly not a barrier if you're able to demonstrate that you've got the skills and knowledge, and you know that you're able to. And obviously, there's also transferable skills as well. What, you know, how you've been and what your own life experience is. Quite often, what we do is put people forward for specialist respite if it's complex needs, and just to do respite and give you a bit of experience before you launch into longer periods of care with young people. So certainly it's not a barrier. It is looked at, and the department, the carer approval and review unit, certainly do ask questions about where can we find the evidence that would say that you would be suitable as a specialist respite or a specialist carer. So we do sort of talk through that, and there's a number of criteria that we need to explain that you meet that criteria in order to do it. Bunk beds, siblings.
I've had carers that have had bunk beds for siblings.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's looked at. There's some safety stuff that needs to be around it and things like that. But yes, bunk beds are certainly.
I think some of the safety things that come up for that are like having them up near the windows or the walls with windows, and say they have blinds and they've got those pull down straps. That's a no, they've got to go because it's a choking hazard. Having the safety bars up and having those good solid steps, not just the ladder things. That's some of the things that have come up.
Yeah. Is your identity kept private so biological parents would not know you? This is a very complex question, a very, very good question. Obviously, we're always working to try and build relationships and communication between biological parents and foster parents wherever it's safe to do so. So there is always talk around whether or not a carer is able to, whether the biological family is in a position where they're able to accept. And that is something that we always try and work on, because it's so important to have that connection in the best ways possible. Sometimes it's not possible, and if it's not deemed safe, obviously your information as a carer and your address and everything is kept private. Quite often young people will go running in family contact with their mum and dad and say, oh, I'm living in whatever suburb on this street, and all that sort of thing as well. So we do
try as hard as we can, but sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Even right down to the children bringing, I don't know, wearing a school top into access is, you know, they're going to know what school it is, so they know what suburb it is.
Yeah. So what we do try and do is make everybody feel comfortable about being involved with that young person's life, and wherever it's safe to do so. I currently work in a school and work in a district special class. Is it an issue if the children are from the school I work at? No, it's not an issue at all. There are some confidentiality sort of aspects that you probably need to be briefed on around some, you know, what information you might share or not share about a child that's in your care. But certainly there is no issue with that at all. We often have young people school educators in disability spaces that are identified as being part of the child's network, and we look at whether or not that's appropriate to put that child in the care of that person. So Thank you, Fran. She's got to leave now. If she may have already left, because there's lots of messages I'm trying to scroll through. I'm looking at respite or emergency care. Tamara, please fill in the call me back form and Sharree will talk to you about that. How many people from the household need to attend training? Whoever's going to play a part in the care of the child. So generally mum and mum, dad and dad. The children don't need to attend. Adult children of the carers don't need to attend if they're just household members. But the primary carer, the person who's going to provide the main caring role, and their partner are the ones that will need to attend training, because both carers, the family as a family unit, is assessed as foster care. And that brings us, is there any more questions? I finally got to the bottom of that. I was like, it was running away from me, all of these questions. In normal travel times, we often have family and friends over from other states visit and stay with us for a week or so. Is this okay as long as everyone has their own room? Certainly, everyone needs to have their own room. We do, if there are people that regularly do that, come into your space, what we will do from our perspective is do national police checks on anyone that would be a regular visitor to your home that's going to stay overnight. The department's very, very strict about those sort of things, so it may very well also need to do working with children's checks as well. But it's very important in terms of the appropriate clearances of anyone that will stay overnight in your home, and where there is a possibility that that person might have unsupervised contact with a young person that's in your care. And Natasha, I would be looking at doing emergency or weekend foster care. Is there much demand for 0 to 3 years old? Emergency care, most certainly there is. The respite care for 0 to 3, certainly in the specialist space, we probably could find, we might want to stretch you to a little bit older than just 0 to 3 in terms but emergency care in that space, quite often we get end of day phone calls where there's a little person that's about to be discharged from hospital and needs somewhere to go for a few days while the department works out what to do next. Certainly worth having a talk to the national line, putting in a call me back form. Someone will talk to you through it, and certainly Sharree can unpack that a bit more as well. So my goodness, here we are at 8:21, which means that that's well over an hour. Is there any more questions? I see there's been a couple of people that have dropped off, but we do still have quite a few people here. If I've not answered, or Sharree and I have not answered all of your questions, please feel free to ask away. Otherwise, the call me back form is a great start to actually, and it's just been posted back up into your into the chat box. Really quick to click on that link, put in your details, and someone will call you more than likely tomorrow. I'll need to click on the form myself actually to find out the actual questions that are asked of it.
It's just your first name, last name, email address, your mobile number, landline number, postal code, and what time is best for the callback, and how did you hear about us?
Good on you, Travis.
Well done, Travis. See you very soon.
That's the way to go.
Look forward to it.
I really appreciate it. No worries at all. Tamara and Ninu, Caroline.
Thank you, everyone.
There's another link that's just been put up for those that you have left, that is videos of our foster carer stories. Erin, is there an easy way to ease into the process? Yes, you can ease into it to some degree, but once we get started, there's the clock starts in terms of the best, and that's about getting the best out of out of the whole process as well. So we do like to get an assessment done within that 3-month period, but also from there you take your time. Once you're approved as a foster carer, then how and when you start providing care really is up to you. We will obviously be calling you going, we've got this child and that child, and are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? But you drive when it is that you're ready.
And certainly through the process too, like even from the moment I contact you and send out the welcome email and then make the home visit, the next one, where we just really get to know each other a bit more. There is it does ease in a bit because of the forms that then need to be completed after that, which really is up to the care applicants, like how quick that's done. And the training sessions, so it can go slower sometimes. See you, Yolande. Bye, Esma. She's lovely. We've had some really awesome care applicants. It's great. Really good.
That's really good to hear. Yeah, it's been a great turnout. Thank you very much, everybody, for turning up. That's been fantastic.